Today, June 9th, 2021, marks the 15th anniversary of the Pixar Cars franchise. Specifically, the very first film was released in theaters 15 years ago today. And to honor that, I will be doing a full scene-by-scene review of each film in the series, starting of course with the original Cars 1. Now, chances are that you've seen my channel name, profile picture, and other videos mine. If you haven't, why not check them out after this video? But if you have, you probably could deduce that I am a massive Cars fan, and therefore, yes, I will have some bias to this film. However, at the same time, a lot of people who've reviewed Cars in the past have complained that it was released after The Incredibles, which makes it look a lot worse. In comparison, as their first viewing wasn't up to Pixar's standards at the time. Either way, I'm going to, well, that doesn't apply to me because I saw Incredibles much later on in my life. Either way, I'm going to approach this film as objectively as possible, as if I'd never seen it before in my life. And without further ado, let's get into it. Pixar Cars starts off with what I consider now to be an iconic black screen and opening narration from the protagonist himself, Lightning McQueen. This opening is just so good, it instantly captivates you. Like, even people who don't like this movie must like this opening, because it's so action-packed, exciting, and fun, with all the music and the racing, and right off the bat, you get the core values and ideas of Lightning McQueen, Chick Hicks, and Strict Weathers. We see McQueen as an excellent racer, but overly confident, as seen when he pulls fancy maneuvers around some of the racers. Chick is not afraid to play dirty right away as he pushes Lee Revkins out of the way. Yet once again he is thwarted by the king who passes him, and we can see the envy in Chick's eyes. All of this is once again explained to us in the commentator's booth by Daryl Cartrip and Bob Cutlass, which brings me to a whole other point. The entire cast of this movie is so good. The amount of real racing legends that were brought in for large roles or cameos is mind-blowing. We got Mario Andretti, Humpy Wheeler, Jay Leno, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. as themselves, Bob Costas and Darrell Waltrip as the broadcasters, Tom and Ray Magliozzi as Rusty and Dusty Rust-Eze, and of course Richard Petty as Strip the King Weathers, who in this universe is a Plymouth Superbird, just like the car Richard Petty drove in real life. None of these, however, compare to Paul Newman. Paul Newman was a famous actor, but his true passion was racing. He's the only real actor of the people previously mentioned, and he does such an incredible job as Doc Hudson, and I'm so glad they didn't recast him once he died, as he basically is Doc. You know that flashback in Cars 3?
That ain't racing. That wasn't even a Sunday drive. There was one lap. Racing is 500 of those. Everybody fighting to move up, lap after lap, inside, outside, inches apart, never touching.
Yeah, that wasn't an unused line from the film. That's actually Paul Newman explaining racing to the behind-the-scenes crew of the first movie.
It isn't just that you go through a turn, 2 turns, or 3 turns. It's that you go through 50 laps on the outside, on the inside, on the inside, on the outside. You know, every lap, inches, never touch.
Aside from the racing cameos, the rest of the cast is great too. I'd argue it's one of Owen Wilson's most iconic roles, even though he's a good actor. Everyone knows Lightning McQueen. Larry the Cable Guy fits Mater pretty well. Cheech Marin and Tony Shalhoub are broad stereotypes, but funny as Ramon and Luigi. Bonnie Hunt is pretty cool as Sally, and let's not forget the legendary George Carlin as Fillmore, the hippie. Michael Keaton is great as Chick Hicks. Shame he didn't reprise his role in Cars 3, and I could just go on, but this video is already on the longer side, so moving on. Lightning shows us once more what a cocky jerk he is by ignoring his pit crew, tying the race by using his tongue, which is a little convenient how well it works out, but whatever. A tiebreaker race is announced in California, and thus the plot truly begins. Whilst on the road, there is a montage of Mac carrying around Lightning whilst life is a highway place. All of the music in this film is great and really fits the scene, each scene it's played in. Real Gone sets the mood right from the start. Life is a Highway is iconic. Our town is a beautiful piece, and even Route 66 fits perfectly, as it's the main setting of the story. Back to the actual movie, we get another awesome action scene, with the delinquent Rust-Eze trolling Mac, and then McQueen navigating his way through the highway, and of course jumping over the train tracks just in time. Followed by this, we enter Radiator Springs, the main setting of the film. It's opened by yet another chase scene, this time between McQueen and the sheriff. You might have noticed a pattern so far. The movie opened with an exciting action-packed race, then after that there's a bit of exposition that is necessary for explaining the plot, and there's a heist scene with the tuners followed by McQueen racing through the highway, and now this chase scene here. The entire film so far has just been fast-paced action, but as soon as Lightning gets arrested, it comes to a grinding halt. The slow-paced scenes in Radiator Springs are executed perfectly because it shows you the film from McQueen's perspective. The racing and thrill is all that he cares about, and so when he arrives in the small town held captive, it is extremely grueling for him. And the movie stays at this slow pace until McQueen starts caring about the town. You'll notice that in the first bit he is always moving as fast as he can, but when he is hooked up to Bessie and the road paving machine, he barely moves at all because of how heavy it is. He tries to go fast again once he tries to escape the town, and again when he challenges Doc to a race. But both times he gets stuck, whether it's running out of gas or getting caught in a cactus. It isn't until his view of the town changes that he is able to move again on his drive with Sally, this time at a medium pace. Now, I have no idea if this is intentional or not, or if I'm just reading too much into it, but if it is intentional, then it is brilliant story framing. McQueen, now in the local impound, wakes up to meet Mater, or more accurately, to Mater but without the to. And Mater is what I would call a perfect side character. He is funny and lighthearted, he can always make you smile, and even if he isn't the brightest, he'll do his best to help you out. Fun fact, originally his role was going to be a lot smaller, but Pixar loved Larry the Cable Guy's performance so much that they inflated the character a lot. Now, I'm not going to touch on his role as the main character in Cars 2, that's for another video, but as for Mater in just the first movie, I think he's pretty great. Next is the courtroom scene. It's basically just a bunch of exposition. You meet all the side characters as well as learn how vacant the town is. We're also introduced now to Doc Hudson, and the way they set him up is almost villain-like. You can tell right away that he has something against race cars. We also get to meet all the other townsfolk and get a grasp on what the town of Radiator Springs is like. Like I said, it's a lot of exposition, but I think it works well. The next portion of the film is just McQueen trying to pave the road while customers show up. Nothing really important is established here, just the same old reiterations of the state the town is and how much McQueen doesn't want to be there. Skipping ahead a bit, Doc challenges McQueen to a race. This scene is always so fun to me looking back on it, as it really demonstrates Doc's knowledge of the sport. He knows McQueen will fail, and so he doesn't even bother trying. We then get to truly see how much racing means to Lightning. As soon as he loses, he fulfills his promise by fixing the first half of the road perfectly. Then he goes off to try and master the track that he couldn't the day before. I also like this bit as it is the first bit in showing the town being restored, and we see how happy it makes all the folks. Just after, Sally offers a motel room to McQueen for him to stay in rather than the impound lot. Considering they got off on the wrong foot or tire, this is a sign of gratitude and really shows how much she cares about the town. Yeah, it's a simple scene, but still effective in establishing her character and personality. Now we get to the tractor chipping scene. It is the first tread in McQueen's character progression. Going back to what I said earlier about the pacing, it starts to pick up right about here when he starts enjoying himself. It also helps establish the world of Cars itself. I've said it once and I'll say it again. The world building is the biggest flaw in this franchise, and as you really have no idea if it's the human world or a parallel dimension or what. That being said, the tractors are one of the few moments that do allude to this Earth's functionality, as they are the equivalent of cows, proving to me, personally, that it is an alternate universe, but again, I'm not here to speculate. After that, we get what is probably the most heartfelt scene in this movie, as Lightning and Mater have a conversation about what McQueen thinks winning the Piston Cup and the Dynaco sponsorship will mean to him. And when Mater calls him his best friend, it always feels like such a special moment. Mater asks McQueen if he could ride in the Dynaco helicopter once he wins the race, and McQueen just agrees, not really caring about it that much, and you know that from his tone he wasn't going to. But then Mater calls him his best friend, and you can see in Lightning's eyes that his perspective begins to change. Next we get the new McQueen and his drive with Sally. The best part of this is how great the animation looks. It really holds up to this day despite it somehow being 15 years ago. Also, lest we forget the town origin clip, explaining how the town got to be so forgotten and foreshadowing the ending. Like I said before, the soundtrack in this movie is great and really highlights the scene. It could almost be a little short story on its own, because though Sally does narrate a bit at the start, you can get a grasp of what's going on based purely off the song and visuals. Now at this point, Lightning knows that Doc used to be the fabulous Hudson Hornet, however we never see him race yet, until now, and it really demonstrates his talent as a racer, where he's able to effortlessly pull off the right-to-go left maneuver that McQueen had struggled with earlier in the movie. McQueen follows him back to his garage where they have a massive argument, and he learns everything that happened to Doc after his crash. Doc even generalizes all racers as being selfish, ironic because the next morning he wakes up to find the road is all finished. Then McQueen purposely delays his departure for a full day to fix up the rest of the town, thus completing his character arc. The irony comes into play here when Doc calls the press over to Radiator Springs to take Lightning away, even after he had just made everyone happy. Sally even says herself that he did not do what was best for everyone, but rather best for him. There's this really subtle moment when McQueen gets taken away and the press fade into the distance. All the neon lights turn off, and Doc is left alone in the streets, only illuminated by the traffic light, which was coincidentally the establishing shot of Radiator Springs in the beginning. It's a really subtle yet powerful moment in my opinion, as it shows what McQueen did for the town and how it would be without him. Now we've arrived at the tiebreaker race, the moment Lightning McQueen has been dreaming about his entire life. It's ironic how well in Radiator Springs all he talked about was this big race, yet now that he's arrived he can't concentrate on anything but the new friends he's made. I like how he's not just losing the race at first, but really performing poorly, with all the constant flashbacks to the town in the midst of important situations. Not long into the race, though, Lightning's new pit crew shows up, and therefore completing Doc's arc. Now, I'm not entirely sure how they get into the pits. That is another minor problem, but it's so minute that it doesn't make a difference to me. McQueen starts performing well, and he uses all the techniques he learned from his buddies, like driving backwards and drifting. It is odd to me that the right-to-go left turn isn't used more prominently. I thought they were setting up for something bigger, but then again, the only other option would be to have him use it to win the race, which of course does not happen. Back on track, throughout the video I have raved about how great the soundtrack is, but it would be a crime if I didn't mention the score as well. Chick uses his dirty tricks to give McQueen a flat tire, and so he returns to the pits to get his tires changed, which must happen quickly if he wants to still have a chance in the race. The scene on paper, it isn't actually that interesting, but the music that plays in the background of this scene elevates it to this epic and grandiose scale that makes me smile every time I watch it. Anyway, McQueen takes the lead over the King and Chick, the latter who is very upset and all he wants is to beat the King one last time, so he pushes him into a giant crash which mirrors the real-life crash that Richard Petty had endured. However, in the movie scenario, it mirrors the crash of Doc Hudson. Finally, to prove McQueen's arc is finished, he gives up the lead he has to save the King. One complaint I've heard about this is, why doesn't McQueen just cross the finish line and then save the King? Well, the answer is quite simple. The racing world would always consider him selfish for that. But also it makes for a much more impactful moment, and once again the score makes the scene where Lightning McQueen helps Strip Weathers cross the finish line one final time just that much better. Wrapping things up quickly here, McQueen is commemorated for his sportsmanship and even offered the sponsorship of Dynaco, which is what he was after, and however he refuses, as it's not what he values anymore. Doc returns to the world of racing as he realizes that not everyone is as bad as he thought. Radiator springs his foot back on the map, both figuratively and literally, and Mater gets to ride in a helicopter. All this for my childhood and now early teenage years wrapped in a box. Overall, this movie is great. The characters are lovable and endure great arcs. The action scenes are fun and exciting, and there's still a good amount of heartfelt moments. Add in the humor targeted towards adults and the constant references for fans of car culture, and you've got what I consider to be a masterpiece. Yes, the story is pretty basic and has been done very similarly many times before, yet somehow it is able to put a unique twist on it. A film doesn't have to be complicated and thought-provoking like Soul to be good. It just needs to be a fun adventure that almost everyone can enjoy, and it bothers me that critics use that as a complaint. Beloved by critics or not, one thing about Cars can't be denied. It was a hit with the kids. And what do kids like? Toys. And thanks to the partnership with Mattel, they were able to develop the famous Diecast line, which leads to money. Money typically spawns sequels, and Cars made a lot of money. So June 24th, 2011, Cars 2 was released to the world. Was it able to capitalize on the charm left from the first film? Tune in on the 10th anniversary of that one to find out.